should have seen the signs earlier. Looking back now, they were as clear as the morning sun streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows in our Malibu estate. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? It makes you trust when you should question, believe when you should doubt. It started 3 months ago when we hired Ashley, 22 years old, with honey blonde hair that cascaded down her back like silk and legs that seemed to go on forever. She had this way of moving through our home, our sanctuary, with a confidence that should have set off alarm bells. But Joshua insisted we needed help. His tech company was expanding rapidly, and I was drowning in charity galas and board meetings. She comes highly recommended, Joshua had said, his dark eyes not quite meeting mine as he handed me Ashley's resume. The agency says she's exceptional. Exceptional. That word would haunt me. The first month passed without incident. Ashley was professional, efficient, almost invisible as she glided through our marble-floored corridors. She knew exactly when to appear with Joshua's morning coffee, black, 2 sugars, and when to disappear into the background. I admired her work ethic, her attention to detail. But then Joshua started changing. It began with small things. He'd linger in the kitchen during his morning routine, chatting with Ashley about mundane topics, the weather, weekend plans, her college courses. His laugh became more frequent, more genuine than it had been with me in months. He started working from home more often, claiming he needed the quiet to focus on his latest acquisition. The office is too chaotic, he'd explain, settling into his home office with his laptop, while Ashley moved through the adjacent living room, dusting our collection of modern art pieces. I get more done here. I noticed how his eyes would drift toward the doorway whenever Ashley passed by, how he'd pause mid-sentence during our conversations when her soft footsteps echoed down the hallway, how he'd suddenly develop an interest in supervising household tasks he'd never cared about before. Ashley, make sure you get the windows in the master bedroom today, he'd call out, his voice carrying a warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in weeks. The morning light should hit them just right around 10 o'clock, exactly when he'd retreat to our bedroom for his conference calls. The showers started lasting longer too. Joshua had always been meticulous about his appearance, but suddenly, his 20-minute morning routine stretched to 45 minutes. I'd hear the water running endlessly while I dressed for my own day, the sound mixing with Ashley's humming as she cleaned nearby rooms. His phone became his shadow. Joshua had never been secretive with his device before. We'd shared passwords, left our phones lying around carelessly. But now, he carried it everywhere, even to the bathroom. The screen would light up with notifications that made him smile in ways I couldn't decipher. Just work stuff, he'd say when I glanced over, his thumb already swiping to dismiss whatever message had captured his attention. You know how demanding the investors can be, but I knew Joshua's work expressions. This wasn't business. This was something else entirely. Ashley seemed different too, more confident, more present. She'd started wearing her uniforms slightly tighter, the buttons of her white blouses straining just enough to be noticeable, but not unprofessional. Her skirts hit at exactly the right length, modest enough for a family home, short enough to showcase her tanned legs as she bent to retrieve fallen items or stretch to dust high shelves. I watched her one Tuesday morning as she cleaned Joshua's office while he worked. She moved with deliberate grace, her movements almost choreographed. When she reached across his desk to straighten papers, her breast brushed against his shoulder, so briefly, so naturally, that it could have been accidental. But Joshua's sharp intake of breath wasn't accidental. Neither was the way his hand trembled as he reached for his coffee cup. "Excuse me, Mr. Hayes," Ashley murmured, her voice honey-sweet with just a hint of breathiness. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "No disturbance at all," Joshua replied, his voice rougher than usual. "Take your time." I stood in the doorway, invisible to both of them, watching this dance of attraction unfold in my own home. Ashley's smile was radiant as she continued her work, and Joshua's eyes followed her every movement like a moth drawn to flame. The electricity between them was palpable. It crackled in the spaces where they stood too close, hummed in the silences that stretched too long. When Ashley would hand Joshua his afternoon snack, always his favorite cookies arranged on the good china, their fingers would brush, just for a moment, just long enough for both of them to pause, to meet each other's eyes, to let something unspoken pass between them. I told myself I was imagining things, paranoid, jealous of a young woman who was simply doing her job well. Joshua loved me. We'd built a life together, survived his company's early struggles, celebrated every milestone. We were solid, unshakable. But doubt is insidious. It creeps in through the smallest cracks, growing larger with every unexplained smile, every lingering glance, every excuse to be in the same room. Last Friday, I came home early from my museum board meeting to find them in the kitchen together. Joshua was leaning against the marble island, still in his business shirt, but with his sleeves rolled up, revealing the forearms I'd once found so attractive. Ashley stood at the sink, washing dishes that could have easily gone in the dishwasher. They were talking quietly, intimately. Joshua's posture was relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. Ashley's laugh tinkled like wind chimes as she responded to something he'd said. When they noticed me, the spell broke. Joshua straightened, suddenly finding his phone intensely interesting. Ashley's cheeks flushed pink as she busied herself with unnecessary tasks. "Rebecca," Joshua said, his tone carefully neutral. "You're home early." "If the meeting ended sooner than expected," I replied, studying both their faces for clues I wasn't sure I wanted to find. Ashley excused herself to tend to the laundry, her exit graceful but hurried. Joshua mumbled something about returning calls and disappeared into his office, leaving me alone in the kitchen that suddenly felt too big, too empty. That night, as Joshua scrolled through his phone beside me in bed, I caught glimpses of message previews that made my stomach clench, names I didn't recognize, conversations that seemed to continue long into the night. "Who's texting so late?" I asked casually. "Just the team in Singapore," he replied without looking up. "Time difference, you know." But Singapore was 13 hours ahead. It would be mid-afternoon there, not late night texting time. I lay awake long after Joshua's breathing evened out, staring at the ceiling and trying to quiet the voice in my head that whispered what I didn't want to hear, the voice that said my husband was falling for our beautiful young maid, and I was powerless to stop it. The seduction had begun. I just didn't know how far it had already progressed. The next morning brought a new reality I wasn't prepared for. Joshua announced over breakfast that he'd be working from home more often. Something about better focus and fewer distractions at the office. But as I watched him glance toward the kitchen, where Ashley was preparing fresh coffee, I knew the real reason had nothing to do with productivity. "Since when do you work better at home?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "You always said the office kept you sharp." "Things change, Rebecca," he replied, his eyes following Ashley's movements as she reached for cups in the upper cabinet. The hem of her uniform dress lifted slightly, revealing the curve of her calves. "Sometimes we need to adapt to new circumstances." The way he said "adapt" made my skin crawl. There was an undertone there, a suggestion that our marriage itself needed adapting to accommodate whatever was happening between them. Over the following days, Joshua's new work-from-home schedule created an intimacy in our house that felt suffocating. I'd return from my own office to find them in what appeared to be innocent situations. Joshua at the kitchen island with his laptop, while Ashley cleaned nearby, or both of them laughing over some shared joke in the living room. But innocent was the last word I'd use to describe what I was witnessing. Ashley had begun wearing different clothes. Gone were the loose-fitting uniforms I'd originally provided. Instead, she wore fitted dresses that hugged her curves, blouses with one button too many undone, skirts that seemed to ride up whenever she bent to dust the lower shelves. "I hope you don't mind," she'd said when I noticed the change. The other uniforms were getting a bit worn. I thought these looked more professional. Professional, right. The worst part was watching Joshua's reaction to her transformation. His eyes would track her movements across the room like a predator following prey. When she'd lean over to arrange flowers on the coffee table, he'd position himself to get the best view. When she'd reach for something on a high shelf, he'd suddenly appear to help, their bodies brushing in ways that seemed accidental, but happened far too often. I started coming home at unexpected times, hoping to catch them in whatever web they were weaving, but they were careful, always maintaining just enough distance to seem appropriate, always having a legitimate reason for being in the same room. It was the whispered conversations that nearly broke me. I'd walk into a room and find them with their heads bent together, speaking in low tones that stopped the moment they sensed my presence. Ashley would immediately busy herself with cleaning, while Joshua would grab his phone or laptop as if he'd been working all. "What were you two discussing?" I asked after catching them in yet another hushed conversation by the window. Ashley was just asking about the best way to clean the crystal chandelier, Joshua replied smoothly. I was telling her about the special solution we use, but I'd had that chandelier for 3 years, and Ashley had cleaned it dozens of times. She knew exactly what solution to use. The lies were becoming more elaborate, more frequent. Joshua would claim he was ordering office supplies when I caught him texting during dinner, but the smile on his face was too warm, too intimate for business correspondence. Ashley would say she was researching new cleaning techniques when I found her looking at her phone with flushed cheeks, but she'd quickly switch screens whenever I got too close. One afternoon, I decided to test my suspicions. I announced that I had a client dinner that would run late, then parked down the street and watched our house through the large front windows. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. Without me there as a buffer, their behavior changed completely. Joshua emerged from his office within minutes of my supposed departure, gravitating toward Ashley like a moth to flame. She was dusting the living room, but her movements were different, more deliberate, more sensual. I watched as she bent to dust the coffee table, her back arched in a way that was clearly meant to be admired. Joshua positioned himself on the couch directly behind her, his laptop forgotten. When she straightened and turned, they were standing much closer than any employer and employee should be. They talked for several minutes, their body language screaming intimacy. Ashley touched his arm while laughing at something he said. Joshua reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his hand lingering against her cheek. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched my husband fall deeper under another woman's spell. But then Ashley glanced toward the window, and I ducked down in my car like a teenager spying on her crush. When I looked up again, they had moved apart, the moment broken. I sat there in my car for another hour, watching them maintain careful distance while the sexual tension between them practically vibrated through the glass. Every glance, every smile, every seemingly innocent interaction was loaded with meaning. When I finally returned home, they were both in their respective places, Joshua in his office, Ashley finishing the kitchen. But the air felt charged, electric, with the energy of whatever had transpired in my absence. How was dinner? Joshua asked without looking up from his laptop. Canceled at the last minute, I lied, studying his face for any sign of disappointment that I'd returned early. Client emergency. He nodded absently, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. He wasn't pleased that his evening alone with Ashley had been cut short. That night, I lay awake listening to Joshua's breathing, wondering how long this dance had been going on. How many intimate moments had they shared while I was at work? How many boundaries had already been crossed? The seduction was no longer subtle. It was happening right under my nose, in my own home, and I felt powerless to stop it without concrete proof. But I was determined to get that proof. If this story is giving you butterflies, like and subscribe. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. While Joshua showered and Ashley hadn't yet arrived, I installed a small security camera in our living room, hidden behind a picture frame, angled to capture the couch and coffee table where I'd seen them getting cozy. For security, I told myself, though we both knew the only security I was worried about was the security of my marriage. As I adjusted the camera's position, my hands shook with a mixture of determination and dread. Part of me hoped I'd capture nothing more than innocent interactions that would prove my suspicions wrong. But a larger part of me, the part that had watched my husband's face light up when Ashley walked into a room, knew I was about to document the destruction of everything I'd built with Joshua. The camera was my last resort, my final attempt to either save my marriage or gather the evidence I'd need to end it. Either way, the truth was about to come to light, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what that truth might reveal. The camera had been recording for 3 days when I finally caught them. I was at my monthly book club meeting, discussing the latest romance novel. The irony wasn't lost on me when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the security app. My heart hammered against my ribs as I excused myself to the bathroom, fingers trembling as I opened the live feed. There they were. Joshua and Ashley stood in our living room, closer than they'd ever been when I was home. His hands rested on her waist. Her fingers played with the collar of his business shirt. The crystal chandelier cast warm light over them as they talked in hushed tones, their faces inches apart. "I can't stop thinking about you," I could read Joshua's lips saying. My stomach dropped. Ashley's response was to rise on her tiptoes, her white blouse pulling tight across her chest, as she whispered something in his ear that made Joshua's eyes close with longing. When she pulled back, the look they shared was electric, pure desire mixed with the dangerous thrill of the forbidden. I gripped my phone tighter, watching my marriage implode in real time. Joshua's hands moved to frame Ashley's face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones with a tenderness he hadn't shown me in months. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. The intimacy of the moment felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "We shouldn't," Ashley mouthed, but her body language said the complete opposite. She pressed closer to Joshua, her hands sliding up his chest to rest over his heart. "I know," Joshua replied, but he didn't step away. Instead, he lowered his head until their foreheads touched. But I can't help myself anymore. The tension between them was suffocating. Even through the camera feed, months of stolen glances and innocent touches had built to this moment, the point where restraint would finally shatter. Ashley was the one who closed the distance. Her lips met Joshua's in a kiss that was anything but hesitant. It was hungry, desperate, full of all the longing they'd been hiding. Joshua's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her against him as the kiss deepened. I watched my husband pour passion into another woman's mouth, his hands tangling in her long hair. My book club discussion continued in the background, but their voices felt distant and meaningless. All I could focus on was the live destruction of my marriage playing out on my phone screen. When they finally broke apart, Both were breathing heavily. Ashley's lips were swollen, her cheeks flushed pink. Joshua looked at her like she was everything he'd ever wanted. "Rebecca's at book club until 10, Ashley whispered, glancing toward the stairs that led to our bedroom. Joshua nodded, understanding passing between them without words. He took her hand, fingers intertwining, and led her toward the staircase. The camera couldn't follow them upstairs, but I knew exactly where they were going. To my bedroom, to my bed. I locked myself in the book club bathroom, shoulders shaking as silent sobs racked my body. Through the thin walls, I could hear my friends laughing about the book's love triangle. They had no idea I was living through one. 45 minutes later, the motion alert chimed again. I forced myself to look. Joshua and Ashley were back in the living room, but everything about them had changed. Ashley's hair was mussed, her white blouse wrinkled and hastily buttoned. Joshua's business shirt was untucked, his usually perfect appearance disheveled in a way that told the whole story. They moved around each other with new intimacy, Ashley straightening Joshua's collar while he smoothed her hair. The guilty satisfaction on their faces made me nauseous. "This has to stay between us," Joshua said, his hands resting on Ashley's shoulders. "I know," Ashley replied, but she was smiling. "It's our secret." Joshua kissed her forehead tenderly. "I've never felt anything like this before." The words hit me like a physical blow. In 12 years of marriage, had Joshua ever said anything so romantic to me? Had he ever looked at me with that same wonder and desire? Ashley pulled out her phone, angling it toward them both. "Something to remember this by," she whispered, pressing record as she kissed Joshua again. The kiss was slow, sensual, full of newfound intimacy. They were creating their own private world, their own memories, their own truth. A truth that didn't include me. When the video ended, Ashley tucked her phone away with a secretive smile. "I should clean up before Rebecca gets home." "She won't be back for an hour," Joshua said, pulling Ashley close again. "We have time," but Ashley shook her head, though she didn't move out of his embrace. "We have to be careful, Joshua. If she finds out." "She won't," Joshua assured her, his voice firm. "We'll be smart about this, smart about this." They were already planning their affair, mapping out how to betray me more efficiently. I watched them separate reluctantly, Ashley heading toward the kitchen, while Joshua straightened the couch cushions, where they'd clearly been intimate earlier. The casual way they covered their tracks spoke of guilt, mixed with excitement, the dangerous thrill of forbidden love. By the time I got home from book club, everything looked normal. Joshua was reading on the couch. Ashley was wiping down the marble island in the kitchen. But I could see the subtle changes. The way Ashley's cheeks flushed when I greeted her, how Joshua avoided my eyes, the electric tension that still hummed between them. "How was book club?" Joshua asked, his tone carefully casual. "Fine," I managed, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Same old discussions about romance and betrayal. Joshua's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Sounds riveting. Ashley finished cleaning and gathered her things to leave. "I'll see you tomorrow," Mrs. Rebecca, she said, her voice sweet as honey. Of course, I replied, watching as she and Joshua shared one last loaded glance before she walked out the door. That night, as Joshua showered, I sat on our bed, the same bed where he'd just been with Ashley, and stared at the security app on my phone. The footage was all there, time-stamped and crystal clear, the evidence of their passion, their promises, their secret. My marriage was officially over, even if Joshua didn't know it yet. The most devastating part wasn't just the betrayal. It was seeing Joshua come alive in a way he hadn't with me in years. The passion in his eyes, the tenderness in his touch, the desperate hunger in his kiss. Ashley had awakened something in my husband that I'd apparently never been able to reach. When Joshua came to bed, he kissed my cheek with lips that had been on another woman just hours before. "Love you," he murmured, the lie rolling off his tongue so easily it made me wonder how long he'd been perfecting the deception. I lay in the dark, listening to him breathe, knowing that tomorrow would bring more stolen moments, more secret touches, more evidence of the affair that was no longer building, but fully blooming. The point of no return had been crossed. Joshua and Ashley were no longer fighting their attraction. They were embracing it. Consequences be damned. And I was left holding the pieces of a marriage that had shattered while I wasn't even home to watch it happen. The next few days became a masterclass in deception, and I had front row seats to watch my husband and our maid perfect their lies. Joshua started leaving for emergency client meetings that lasted exactly as long as Ash's deep cleaning sessions in our bedroom. He'd return home with his business shirt slightly wrinkled, his hair just a touch disheveled, claiming traffic had been terrible. "You should shower," I'd suggest innocently, watching him freeze for just a moment before nodding too enthusiastically. Good idea, long day. But it was the small details that truly revealed their elaborate charade. Joshua had started wearing a new cologne, something woody and masculine that definitely wasn't the bottle sitting on his dresser. When I asked about it, he claimed he'd run out of his usual brand and grabbed something random at the drugstore. The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly, I almost believed him. Ashley, meanwhile, had developed a knowing smile whenever she passed me in the hallway. Not quite smug, but satisfied in a way that made my skin crawl. She'd hum while folding laundry, her movements lighter, more graceful, like a woman who discovered a delicious secret. "You seem happy," I commented one afternoon, watching her dust the crystal chandelier with unusual enthusiasm. "Oh, just grateful for this job, Mrs. Rebecca. You and Mr. Joshua have been so accommodating." The pause before accommodating was deliberate, a private joke I wasn't meant to understand. Through my security app, I watched them develop an intricate system of communication. Ashley would leave Joshua's coffee cup in specific positions on the marble island handle facing. Left meant the coast was clear. Handle right meant I was home. They'd exchanged phone numbers under the pretense of coordinating cleaning schedules, but their text messages were hardly about household chores. I'd catch glimpses of Joshua's phone screen when he thought I wasn't looking. Messages like, "Can't wait for our next cleaning session," and "missing your special attention" made my stomach turn. The closest call came on a Thursday afternoon. I told them both I had a dentist appointment, but the office called to reschedule just as I was pulling out of the driveway. Instead of going back inside, I sat in my car for a moment, checking the security feed on my phone. Joshua and Ashley were already in our bedroom, her white blouse half unbuttoned, his hands tangled in her dark hair. The passion between them was undeniable, urgent, desperate, like they'd been starving for each other. I was about to drive away when Mrs. Henderson from next door knocked on my passenger window. "Rebecca, dear, I thought that was you. Didn't you just leave?" My heart pounded as I rolled down the window. "Forgot something important," I managed, glancing at my phone where Joshua was now kissing Ashley's neck with an intensity that made my chest ache. "Oh, that's funny. I could have sworn I saw Joshua's car in the garage when you left. Isn't he supposed to be at work?" Mrs. Henderson's innocent question felt like a trap. She was the neighborhood gossip, always noting who came and went, when cars were parked where they shouldn't be. "He had to come home sick," I lied, surprised by how easily the deception came. "Stomach bug. I'm just running to get him some medicine. Poor thing." "Well, at least Ashley's there to take care of him. Such a sweet girl. Always so attentive to your family's needs." The irony in her words was suffocating. If only she knew exactly how attentive Ashley was being. I drove around the block 3 times before finally going to the actual pharmacy, buying medicine I didn't need for an illness Joshua didn't have. When I returned home an hour later, both Joshua and Ashley were perfectly composed. He was at his laptop on the living room couch. She was vacuuming the stairs. "Feeling better?" I asked Joshua, setting the medicine bag on the coffee table. He looked confused for a split second before catching Ashley's warning glance. "Much better, thanks. Ashley made me some tea. Really helped." I bet she did. That night, I noticed Ashley had left a hair tie on Joshua's nightstand, a small, intimate item that belonged in a bedroom, just not ours. When I held it up questioningly, Joshua claimed he'd found it in the laundry and forgot to return it. Another lie, delivered with practiced ease. The most heartbreaking moment came when I was pretending to read in the living room while they thought I was napping upstairs. Through the security camera, I watched Joshua brush a strand of hair from Ashley's face with such tenderness, such genuine affection, that I had to grip my book to keep from crying. "We have to be more careful," Ashley whispered, straightening his collar. "Mrs. Henderson was asking questions earlier." "I know, but I can't help myself around you," Joshua replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You make me feel alive again, alive again." As if our 15-year marriage had been slowly killing him, and Ashley was his resurrection. They were getting bolder, staying in our bedroom longer, taking more risks. Yesterday, I'd found Ashley's lipstick in Joshua's pants pocket when I was sorting laundry. Not hidden, just forgotten in the rush of their passion. when I confronted him about it, holding the small golden tube like evidence in a courtroom. Joshua barely blinked. Ashley asked me to grab it from the bathroom counter when I was getting my watch. Must have slipped into my pocket. The lie was so elaborate, so detailed. I almost admired its creativity, but it was the way they looked at each other now that truly revealed the depth of their deception. Stolen glances across the kitchen, fingers that lingered just a moment too long when passing dishes, smiles that held entire conversations I wasn't privy to. They'd created their own private world, complete with inside jokes, secret signals, and shared memories of passion I could only witness through a screen. The thrill of their forbidden affair was intoxicating. I could see it in the flush of Ashley's cheeks when Joshua entered a room, in the way his eyes followed her movements with hungry appreciation. They were drunk on deception, high on the danger of being caught. What they didn't know was that they already had been caught. Every kiss, every promise, every moment of stolen intimacy was documented, time-stamped, and saved on my phone. I was no longer just the betrayed wife. I was the keeper of their secrets, the silent witness to their lies, the woman holding enough evidence to destroy both their worlds. The question was, what was I going to do with it? Sitting here now, watching Joshua sleep peacefully beside me, while Ashley's scent still clings to his skin, I realize I'm at a crossroads. I could confront them both, demand explanations for lies I already know are lies. I could pack my bags and leave, taking half of everything and my dignity with me. Or I could continue this twisted game, collecting evidence like a detective building a case. Comment below. Am I the hero or the villain here? The answer came sooner than I expected. I woke up Tuesday morning to find Joshua's wedding ring sitting on his nightstand instead of wrapped around his finger where it belonged. The gold band caught the morning light streaming through our bedroom window, practically winking at me with its abandonment. My stomach dropped. In 15 years of marriage, Joshua had never taken that ring off, not for showers, not for yard work, not even when he'd broken his finger playing basketball 3 years ago. The emergency room doctor had to cut around it. But there it sat, discarded like an afterthought. I dressed quietly, my hands shaking as I pulled on my work clothes. Joshua stirred, but didn't wake, his face peaceful in sleep, while mine burned with the knowledge of what that empty ring finger meant. He was removing the symbol of our marriage before his encounters with Ashley. Downstairs, Ashley was already moving through the kitchen with practiced grace, her long hair swept into a neat bun. She wore one of those white blouses that seemed to be her uniform, now crisp, professional, and designed to drive my husband wild. "Good morning, Mrs. Rebecca," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Coffee's fresh." I poured myself a cup with steady hands, though my heart hammered against my ribs. "Thank you, Ashley. Did you sleep well?" A flush crept up her neck. "Yes, ma'am, very well." Liar. I knew she'd spent half the night texting Joshua. My hidden camera had captured the glow of her phone screen through her bedroom window. Until nearly 2 in the morning. At work, I couldn't concentrate on anything except the growing pile of evidence in my phone's gallery. During my lunch break, I scrolled through our credit card statements online, looking for anything suspicious. There it was, a charge at Victoria's Secret from last Friday. $147. I hadn't bought anything there in months. My hands trembled as I clicked for more details. The purchase was made at 2:30 p.m., right when Joshua claimed to be in a client meeting, and I was at my book club. The same day, I'd watched them through my security feed, their bodies pressed together on our kitchen counter. He'd bought her lingerie with our money on our credit card. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. It was one thing to know about their physical affair, but this felt different, more intimate, more deliberate. Joshua had walked into that store, browsed through delicate fabrics and lace, imagining Ashley wearing them. He'd handed over our credit card to pay for another woman's underwear. I screenshot the charge and added it to my growing evidence folder. That evening, I arrived home earlier than usual, claiming a headache. Ashley was in the living room, dusting the crystal chandelier with careful precision. Her phone lay face up on the coffee table, screen still glowing. She looked up startled when I walked in. "Oh, Mrs. Rebecca, I didn't expect you until 6. "A headache," I said simply, moving toward the couch where her phone waited like a gift. Ashley rushed to grab it, but not before I caught a glimpse of the open message thread, Joshua's name at the top, and below it, words that made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you wearing what I bought you. Tonight, after she goes to sleep." Ashley's face went white as she realized what I might have seen. I was just. My friend was asking about work schedules. I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. "Of course. I hope you feel better soon. You look a bit pale." She nodded quickly, clutching her phone against her chest like armor. "Thank you. I think I might be getting a cold." Later that night, I lay in bed listening to Joshua's breathing, waiting. At 11:30, he slipped out of bed with practiced stealth. I heard his bare feet on the hardwood, the soft click of our bedroom door closing. I gave him 10 minutes before following. The house was dark, except for a thin line of light under Ashley's bedroom door. I crept down the hallway, my heart pounding so loud I was certain they'd hear it. Through the crack beneath her door, I could see movement, shadows dancing in the warm lamplight. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard Joshua's low laugh, the rustle of fabric, Ashley's soft gasp of pleasure, the sounds of my husband making love to another woman in my house, 10 feet from where I stood. The next morning brought a new discovery that nearly broke my resolve entirely. I was making our bed when I saw it, a small silver earring half hidden beneath Joshua's pillow. Not mine. I'd never seen it before, but I knew exactly who it belonged to. Ashley always wore tiny silver hoops, delicate things that caught the light when she moved. I'd noticed them countless times, never thinking they'd end up in my marriage bed. I picked up the earring with shaking fingers, studying its perfect circular shape. It was still warm, This was evidence of the most intimate betrayal, proof that Ashley had been in our bed, in the sacred space Joshua and I had shared for over a decade. They'd made love on our sheets, used our pillows, violated the one place that should have remained ours alone. I slipped the earring into my pocket and finished making the bed with mechanical precision. The fitted sheet needed to be pulled tighter on Joshua's side. The pillows required fluffing, normal domestic tasks that felt surreal given what I'd just discovered. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to the electronics store downtown and purchased a second security camera. This one designed to be completely invisible. The sales clerk, a young man with kind eyes, helped me choose one that would blend seamlessly into our bed. This model has night vision and records continuously to a cloud server, he explained. Perfect for home security. Home security. If only he knew what I really needed security from. Back home, I installed the camera inside an antique jewelry box on my dresser, positioning it to capture the entire bed. The lens was smaller than a pencil eraser, hidden behind decorative mesh that looked like part of the box's design. Joshua would never notice it. Neither would Ashley. That night at dinner, I watched them both with new eyes. Joshua carved the roast beef with steady hands while Ashley served vegetables. Their movements coordinated like dancers who'd rehearsed this routine. They were comfortable now, confident in their deception. Ashley wore a new necklace, delicate gold chain with a small pendant that nestled just above her collarbone. I wondered if that was part of the Victoria's secret purchase too. If Joshua had upgraded from just to jewelry. This is delicious, Ashley, Joshua said, his eyes lingering on her face. You've really outdone yourself. She blushed prettily. Thank you, Mr. Joshua. I'm glad you like it. I took a bite of beef and smiled. Yes, it's wonderful. You both seem so happy lately. Joshua's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Ashley's eyes flicked nervously between us. Happy? Joshua asked. Just an observation, I said lightly. You've both been glowing recently. It's nice to see. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Ashley excused herself to get more wine from the kitchen. Joshua watched her go, his gaze following the sway of her hips with unconcealed hunger. He didn't even pretend anymore. The mask was slipping, and soon, very soon, I would have everything I needed to destroy the elaborate lie they'd built around me. Sitting there at our dining table, surrounded by the trappings of our normal life, I realized I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the hunter, and my prey had no idea how thoroughly trapped they already were. The wine Ashley brought back was a Merlot from our private collection, the expensive bottle Joshua had been saving for our anniversary. She poured it with practiced grace, her new gold necklace catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. This is from the reserve collection, I observed, swirling the deep red liquid in my glass. Joshua's jaw tightened. I thought we deserved something special tonight. Special? I took a sip, letting the word hang in the air. "What makes tonight so special, darling?" Ashley's hand trembled slightly as she set the bottle down. The small pendant at her throat seemed to pulse with her quickened heartbeat. "Can't a man want to celebrate a beautiful evening with his wife?" Joshua's voice carried forced lightness, but his eyes were cold. I smiled and nodded, playing my part perfectly. After dinner, I helped Ashley clear the dishes while Joshua retreated to his study. In the kitchen, she moved with nervous energy, her usual graceful efficiency replaced by jittery movements. "You seem tense tonight," I said casually, loading plates into the dishwasher. "Just tired, Mrs. Rebecca." She wouldn't meet my eyes. When she reached for her phone on the marble island, I moved closer. "That's a beautiful necklace. Where did you get it?" Her hand flew to her throat. "It was a gift from my sister." Another lie. I watched her fingers fumble with her phone, and that's when I saw it, a notification preview on her lock screen. A video file sent from a number I recognized as Joshua's burner phone. My blood turned to ice. "Could you grab the wine glasses from the dining room?" I asked sweetly. The moment she left, I snatched her phone. Her passcode was pathetically simple: 6:30, Joshua's birthday. My hands shook as I opened the video file. The footage was crystal clear, shot in our bedroom, with afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. Joshua's hands tangled in Ashley's dark hair as she arched beneath him on our bed. My side of the bed, the white sheets I'd changed that morning, were rumpled beneath their naked bodies. "God, Ashley," Joshua's voice groaned from the speakers. "I've wanted this for so long." "I know," she whispered back, her lips finding his neck. "I've watched you watching me." The video was nearly 10 minutes long. They were passionate, hungry, completely lost in each other. This wasn't a momentary weakness or a single mistake. This was practiced intimacy, the kind that comes from repeated encounters. At one point, Joshua lifted Ashley's chin and looked directly into her eyes. "She doesn't understand me like you do." Ashley's fingers traced his chest. "When will you tell her?" "Soon," he promised. "Once I figure out how to handle the financial situation." I nearly dropped the phone. They were planning to end my marriage while discussing my money. Footsteps approached from the dining room. I quickly closed the video and set the phone back down, but my hands were shaking so violently I could barely stand. Ashley returned with the wine glasses, taking one look at my face. "Mrs. Rebecca, are you feeling all right?" Actually, no. My voice sounded strange, distant. "I think I need to speak with both of you." I walked to Joshua's study and pushed open the door without knocking. He looked up from his laptop, irritation flashing across his face. "We need to talk, all three of us. Living room, now." Something in my tone made him close the laptop immediately. Ashley was waiting by the coffee table when we entered, her phone clutched in her hands like a lifeline. I positioned myself between them and the front door. "I saw the video," I said quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. Ashley's phone clattered to the floor. Joshua's face went white. "What video?" he asked, but his voice cracked. "The one you sent to Ashley today. The one of you two fucking in my bed. Ashley began to cry, not the pretty tears of a remorseful girl, but ugly, choking sobs. Mrs. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I never meant. Shut up, my voice was ice. How long? Joshua found his voice. Rebecca, let me explain. How long? The words exploded from me with such force that both of them flinched. Ashley whispered through her tears, 3 months, 3 months, while I'd been noticing small changes, making excuses, trying to be a better wife. They'd been building an entire relationship behind my back. 3 months of lying to my face, I continued, my voice deadly calm now. 3 months of you coming into my home, eating my food, taking my money, and fucking my husband. Joshua stepped forward. Rebecca, please. It's not what you think. It's not what I think. I laughed, a harsh sound that made Ashley sob harder. I watched you promise to leave me for her, Joshua. I heard you discuss my money like I was already dead. His face crumpled. You don't understand. You've been so cold, so distant. When was the last time you looked at me the way she does? So this is my fault. The rage was building now, hot and righteous. I drove you to fuck the help in our bed. Ashley tried to speak. We never meant for it to happen, but it did happen, over and over again. I turned to her, this girl I'd trusted, who I'd treated like family. You home-wrecking little bitch. You knew exactly what you were doing. Don't call her that, Joshua snapped, moving protectively toward Ashley. The gesture broke something fundamental inside me. Even now, even caught, he was choosing her. Get out, I whispered. Rebecca, Joshua started. Get out, I screamed, both of you. Get out of my house right now. Ashley scrambled for her phone and ran toward the stairs, probably to pack her things. But Joshua stood his ground. This is my house too, he said coldly. You can't just throw me out. Watch me. I pulled out my own phone. I'm calling my lawyer first thing Monday morning, and I'm sending copies of that video to everyone we know. The blood drained from his face. You wouldn't. Try me. I held his gaze. Your mother, your boss, our neighbors. Everyone will see exactly what kind of man you are. For a moment, we stared at each other across the wreckage of our 15-year marriage. This man who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd held me through my father's funeral, who'd said I was the only woman he'd ever need. I loved you, I whispered. Something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe, or just fear of the consequences. I know. Ashley appeared at the top of the stairs with a hastily packed bag. Joshua looked between us, then walked to her. I'll be back for the rest of my things, he said without looking at me. I watched them leave together, Ashley's gold necklace glinting as she passed under the porch light. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. I stood alone in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of our dinner, the expensive wine still half full in forgotten glasses. The silence was complete and devastating. But underneath the pain, underneath the betrayal and rage, something else was growing. Something cold and calculating. They thought this was over. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what I was capable of. If you've ever been betrayed by the person you trusted most, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, because this is just the beginning of what happens when a woman decides to take back her power. The first 24 hours were the worst. I sat on my couch until dawn, staring at the wine glasses on the coffee table. Joshua's lipstick-stained glass next to mine, a perfect metaphor for our destroyed marriage. When the sun finally crept through the curtains, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My phone buzzed constantly. Joshua's texts started apologetic, then grew desperate. "Rebecca, please, we need to talk. I made a terrible mistake. I love you. Don't do anything rash. Think about what we built together." I deleted each message without responding. Let him sweat. Ashley had left behind a hair tie on my nightstand. A final insult I discovered when I finally dragged myself upstairs. I threw it in the trash with such force the entire wastebasket toppled over. By noon, I'd made my first call to Margaret Chen, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. Her assistant scheduled me for the following Monday. Document everything, Margaret had advised during our brief phone consultation. Assets, accounts, evidence of the affair. Leave no stone unturned. I spent the afternoon doing exactly that. I photographed the Victoria's secret charges on our joint credit card statement. I saved screenshots of Joshua's recent cash withdrawals, money he'd probably spent on hotel rooms. I documented every piece of jewelry missing from my collection, every unexplained expense. The hidden camera in our bedroom had captured more than just that one devastating video. Hours of footage showed Joshua bringing Ashley into our sacred space repeatedly over the past month. I watched him help her out of her white blouse on our Egyptian cotton sheets. I saw him spray his cologne on her neck while she laughed. Each frame was a knife to my heart, but also ammunition. Tuesday morning, my sister Alina called. "Rebecca, I just got the strangest call from Joshua. He's staying at the Hampton in downtown and says you two are working through some issues." "What's going on?" I told her everything. By the time I finished, Alina was crying. "That bastard," she whispered. "After everything you've done for him, the way you supported him through business school, bought him that expensive watch for his promotion." "Don't," I said. "Don't make me remember the good times." Not yet, but Alina was right. I'd been the primary breadwinner for the first 5 years of our marriage. I'd encouraged his dreams, celebrated his successes, forgiven his failures. The crystal chandelier hanging over our dining table, I'd bought that to celebrate his first big client. The marble island where I'd caught him texting Ashley. I'd designed the entire kitchen renovation around his wish for a chef's workspace. Now those beautiful things felt like monuments to my stupidity. Wednesday brought more calls. My mother, devastated. Joshua's sister Maria, torn between loyalty and disgust. Our neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who'd always thought that young Maid was trouble. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had seen signs I'd missed. She was all flirty with him. My book club friend Janet confided over coffee. Last month, when I dropped off those garden magazines, I saw them standing very close by your front door. The way she looked at him, I should have said something. I wanted to scream. Why hadn't anyone warned me? Why had I been the only one blind to what was happening in my own home? Thursday, Joshua showed up at my office. I saw him through my glass door, looking haggard in a wrinkled business shirt. He'd lost weight, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. Good. 5 minutes, I told my assistant. Then call security. He sat across from my desk, like a stranger. This man who'd shared my bed for 15 years, who knew I liked my coffee black and my bath scalding hot, who'd held my hand during my father's funeral. "You look tired," he said. "You look like hell." I didn't look up from my laptop. "Say what you came to say." I ended it with Ashley. Now I looked at him. When? Monday night. After we left, I drove her to her sister's place in Richmond and told her it was over. How noble of you. Only took getting caught on camera. He flinched. I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But Rebecca, we had problems before Ashley. We both know that. The words hit like a slap because he wasn't entirely wrong. For months before Ashley arrived, we'd been living like roommates. I worked late constantly, chasing the promotion that finally came last spring. Joshua handled more of the household stuff, felt unappreciated, started making comments about my priorities. When had we stopped having dinner together? When had we stopped talking about anything deeper than schedules and bills? When had we stopped making love? Don't, I said. Don't you dare blame our marriage problems for your choice to fuck our maid. I'm not blaming anything on you. I'm just saying, maybe if we'd worked harder. Get out, I stood up. Get out before I have you thrown out. He left without another word. That evening, I sat in our bedroom with a bottle of Merlot, staring at the bed where I'd found Ashley's silver earring. The sheets were fresh. I'd burned the old ones in our backyard fire pit Tuesday night, along with Ashley's forgotten hair tie. I opened my laptop and stared at the divorce papers Margaret's office had emailed. 15 years reduced to legal terminology and asset division. The house would probably have to be sold. I could afford the mortgage alone, but did I want to stay here? Every room held memories now tainted by betrayal. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Rebecca, this is Ashley. I am so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I was stupid and selfish. I quit and moved back to Richmond. I will never contact Joshua again. Please forgive me. I stared at the message for a long time. This girl, because that's what she was, just a girl, had helped destroy my marriage. But looking at her words, I felt something unexpected. Pity. She'd lost her job, her home, probably her reputation. Joshua had used her youth and inexperience, made her promises he never intended to keep. When push came to shove, he'd chosen to protect himself, not her. I deleted the message without responding. Friday night, I called Joshua. We need to talk, I said, Really talk about everything. Are you ready for that? No, but we're going to do it anyway. He came over Saturday morning. We sat in our living room like strangers. The coffee table between us, loaded with legal documents, bank statements, and the weight of 15 years together. I don't know if we can fix this, I said. He nodded. I know, but I need to understand why. I need to understand how we got here. For the first time since Monday night, Joshua met my eyes directly. I felt invisible, he said quietly. In our marriage, in our home, you were so focused on work, so driven. I admired that about you, but I felt like I didn't matter anymore. The words stung because they held truth. So you found someone who made you feel visible. Ashley saw me. She laughed at my jokes, asked about my day. She made me feel young again, desired. I used to do that, I know, and I took it for granted. I took you for granted. And we sat in silence. The ruins of our marriage spread between us like evidence in a trial. The question hanging in the air was simple. Was there anything left worth saving? I looked at this man I'd loved for so long, this stranger who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way, and realized I didn't know the answer yet, but I was willing to try to find out. That conversation was just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, Joshua and I met every Saturday morning in our living room. Same couch, same coffee table, but each week the legal documents got pushed further to one side as we slowly excavated the ruins of our marriage. I want to understand the timeline, I said during our second meeting. When did you stop feeling connected to me? Joshua ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times, but now felt foreign. Honestly, about 2 years ago, when you got the promotion to senior partner, the words hit like ice water. My greatest professional achievement had been the beginning of our end. You were working 70-hour weeks, he continued, coming home exhausted, distracted. I tried to talk to you about it, but you'd brush me off. Say we'd discuss it later, when things calmed down. But they never calmed down, I whispered. No, they never did, and I stopped trying. I remembered those conversations now, hazily. Joshua standing in our kitchen while I scrolled through emails, asking about weekend plans I'd already mentally canceled, me promising we'd reconnect after the Morrison case, after the Henderson merger, after the next big thing. That doesn't excuse what you did with Ashley, I said. No, it doesn't. Nothing excuses that. But Rebecca, I was drowning in our marriage, and you didn't even notice I was going under. The third Saturday, I brought a bottle of wine. Not our usual Merlot, something new, something that didn't carry the weight of memory. I've been seeing Dr. Martinez, I said, pouring 2 glasses. A therapist. Joshua looked surprised. How is that going? Painful, eye-opening. She asked me something last week that I can't stop thinking about. I took a sip of wine, gathering courage. She asked me when I last felt truly happy in our marriage. What did you tell her that I couldn't remember? That scared me more than the affair, Joshua, that I couldn't remember the last time I felt joy with you. We sat with that admission hanging between us like smoke. "I remember," Joshua said quietly, "when, last Christmas, you were making those terrible cookies you insist on baking every year, the ones that always burn on the bottom. You had flour in your hair and frosting on your cheek, and you were laughing at some story your sister had told you on the phone." And I did remember. The kitchen had been a disaster, flour everywhere, and I'd been stress baking while juggling 3 work calls. "You looked so beautiful," he continued. "So alive. I wanted to kiss the frosting off your face, but you were already moving on to the next thing. Always the next thing. Why didn't you kiss me anyway?" "Because I'd learned not to interrupt you when you were in work mode, even during Christmas cookies." The 4th Saturday, Joshua brought something with him, a small notebook with a worn leather cover. "I've been writing," he said, setting it on the coffee table next to our wine glasses, "trying to figure out when I became someone capable of betraying you. Can I read it?" That's why I brought it. The notebook was filled with Joshua's careful handwriting, dates and observations going back months before Ashley arrived, pages of loneliness, of feeling like a stranger in his own home, of watching me succeed professionally while our marriage withered. One entry made me stop breathing. Rebecca worked until midnight again. When she finally came to bed, I pretended to be asleep. I wanted to tell her about the promotion opportunity at work, but she looked so exhausted. I keep waiting for the right time to share things with my wife, but the right time never comes. I'm starting to wonder if she'd even notice if I disappeared. "You wrote this 3 months before Ashley started working for us," I said. "The affair didn't create our problems, Rebecca. It just made them impossible to ignore." I closed the notebook carefully. "I need you to know something. When I saw that video of you and Ashley, I wanted to destroy you both. I had plans, Joshua. Legal strategies that would have left you with nothing. Why didn't you?" "Because destroying you would have meant destroying myself too. And because—" I paused, the words catching in my throat. "Because even after everything, I still love you. I hate myself for it, but I do." Joshua's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. I never stopped, even when I was with her. That's what made it so awful. Love isn't enough, though. It wasn't enough before, and it's not enough now. I know." The 5th Saturday changed everything. "I've made a decision," I said before Joshua could even sit down. "I'm willing to try to rebuild this marriage. But not the old marriage, Joshua. That marriage is dead. We're going to have to create something completely new." He sat down slowly. "What would that look like?" I pulled out a sheet of paper I'd been working on all week. "Complete transparency. Your phone, your email, your schedule. Everything is open to me. No exceptions, no privacy. Not for a long time." Joshua nodded. "Couples therapy, twice a week minimum. Individual therapy for both of us. You find a new job. You can't keep working from home where you met her. Okay, I'm cutting back my hours at the firm. I'm stepping down from 2 major cases and bringing in a partner to share the Morrison account. My career nearly cost us our marriage. I won't let it finish the job. Rebecca, you don't have to. Yes, I do. We both have to change, Joshua. We both created the conditions that made this possible. I looked at the paper, at the list I'd written and rewritten a dozen times. There's one more thing, the biggest thing. Joshua waited. I need you to understand that forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. I will never forget what you did. There will be days when I look at you and see her hands on your body, her mouth on yours. There will be nights when I can't bear to be touched by you. There will be moments when I wonder if I'm a fool for trying this. My voice broke slightly. If you can't handle that reality, if you need a wife who can pretend this never happened, then we end this now. Joshua reached across the coffee table and took my hands. For the first time in months, I didn't pull away. I can handle it, he said. I want to handle it. I want to earn my way back to you, Rebecca. However long it takes. I looked at our joined hands, at his wedding ring back on his finger where it belonged. Then we try, I said. God help us both, we try. Have you ever been in a complicated situation like this? Tell me in the comments. That night, for the first time since the night I discovered the video, Joshua stayed for dinner. We sat at our kitchen table, the same marble island, where I'd first noticed his changed behavior months ago, and ate takeout Chinese food in careful, hopeful silence. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't trust, not by a long shot. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, a beginning is enough. 3 weeks later, I watched Joshua place his phone face up on the kitchen counter beside his coffee cup, our new morning ritual. The screen lit up with a text notification, and he didn't even glance at it before sliding the device toward me. Marketing team meeting moved to 10:30, he said, buttering his toast. You can check if you want. I didn't, not this morning. But knowing I could made all the difference. The transparency agreement we'd signed, yes, we'd actually put it in writing, covered everything. Phone access, email passwords, social media accounts, work schedule changes, even his gym routine. Joshua had handed over every digital key to his life without hesitation. Dr. Martinez wants to see us individually next week before our couple session, I said, reviewing my calendar app. Are you okay with Thursday at 2? Already blocked it out. Joshua poured fresh coffee into my favorite blue mug, the one with the small chip on the handle that I'd refused to throw away. I requested the afternoon off. But these small gestures, the coffee, the schedule coordination, the way he now asked before making any plans, were rebuilding something between us. Not trust, not yet, but the foundation where trust might eventually grow. Ashley's absence filled our house like negative space. Joshua had fired her the morning after our reconciliation conversation, handling it professionally through the agency. They'd sent a replacement, Margaret, a 60-something woman with kind eyes, and absolutely no interest in anything beyond keeping our home spotless. She seems efficient, Joshua had said after Margaret's first day, and I actually laughed. The first genuine laugh I'd shared with my husband in months. But the real work wasn't in the big gestures or the signed agreements. It was in moments like this Tuesday evening when Joshua found me crying in our bedroom closet, holding the white blouse I'd worn the night I discovered their video. "I was going to donate this," I whispered as he knelt beside me on the carpet. "But then I thought, why should I give up my clothes because of what you did?" Joshua didn't try to touch me or offer empty comfort. He just sat there, letting me feel what I needed to feel. "I threw away my cologne," he said finally. "The one I wore that night. I couldn't stand the smell anymore." I looked at him through my tears. "You loved that cologne. I love you more." It was such a simple statement, but it broke something open in my chest. Not forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that yet. But acknowledgement. Recognition that we were both paying prices for his choices. Our weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez became sacred time. Neutral ground where we could excavate the wreckage of our marriage with professional guidance. Joshua talked about feeling invisible, about how the demands of my book club presidency and his work promotions had created distance between us. I talked about feeling taken for granted, about how I'd stopped seeing him as a partner and started seeing him as another responsibility to manage. Neither of those things justified the affair, Dr. Martinez had said during our third session, but understanding them helps prevent future ones. Joshua's notebook, the leather one where he'd documented his loneliness, became required reading for both of us, not as ammunition for arguments, but as a roadmap of where we'd gone wrong. I started keeping my own journal, documenting not just his progress, but my own healing process. "Some days I hate you," I wrote in one entry that I later read aloud to him. "Some days I remember why I fell in love with you. Most days I feel both things at the same time, and it's exhausting." If Joshua had nodded, his eyes wet. "I can live with your hate," he'd said. "I earned it. I can't live without your love." The physical intimacy returned slowly, carefully. A hand on my shoulder as he passed behind my chair, his fingers brushing mine as we both reached for the salt. The night he'd actually asked, if he could hold me while I cried after a particularly difficult therapy session. "I don't know if I can be touched right now," I'd admitted. "Then I'll just sit here," he'd said, and he had. For 2 hours, he'd sat beside me on our bed while I sobbed, never trying to fix or comfort, just present. Our first kiss since the reconciliation happened 6 weeks in, over morning coffee. Nothing passionate or desperate, just a soft press of lips that tasted like hope and hurt in equal measure. "Was that okay?" Joshua asked afterward. "Ask me tomorrow," I'd replied, and he'd smiled. The check-ins we'd agreed to became lifelines. Every Friday evening, we'd sit at the kitchen table with 2 glasses of wine. Never the Merlot. We'd both silently agreed on that, and review the week, what had worked, what hadn't, how we were feeling about our progress. I saw a woman at the grocery store today who looked like her. I told him during one of these sessions, for about 30 seconds. I wanted to follow her home and destroy her life. Joshua had gone very still. What stopped you? The realization that she wasn't the one who broke our marriage vows. It was brutal honesty, but it was honest. And honesty, we'd learned, was the only currency that mattered now. Joshua's grand gestures came in waves. Fresh flowers every Monday, not roses, which reminded me too much of romance, but sunflowers and daisies that spoke of friendship and new beginnings. A weekend getaway to the mountain cabin where we'd spent our honeymoon, not to recreate those memories, but to make new ones. The way he'd started cooking dinner twice a week, following YouTube tutorials with endearing determination. But it was the small things that began to heal us. The way he now asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. How he'd started leaving little notes in my lunch bag, not love letters, just observations about the weather or reminders to drink water. The evening he'd found me reading on the couch and simply sat at the other end, reading his own book, content to share the silence. I'm proud of us, I told him one night as we prepared for bed. We'd been sleeping in the same room for 2 weeks, though he still used the guest bathroom to change clothes. Even with how hard this is, especially because of how hard this is, I turned off the bedside lamp, plunging our room into the kind of darkness that made truth easier. Most couples would have divorced by now. Most couples probably should have, but not us. Joshua was quiet for a long moment. I can't promise I'll never hurt you again, Rebecca. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll never stop trying to deserve you. I reached across the space between us, still careful, still tentative, and found his hand in the darkness. That's enough, I whispered. For now, that's enough. We weren't the same couple who'd started this journey. We were scarred, cautious, rebuilding from rubble. But we were rebuilding together, with blueprints drawn from hard-won wisdom and foundations reinforced with painful truth. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I'd once believed in. It was better. It was real. And sometimes, real is exactly what love looks like.